The entire goal of this video is to help you unlock that next gear of editing speed in Davinci Resolve. And to do that, we're going to need to get rid of our mouse. Now, we're going to talk about the method that I use, the pros and cons of that method, and at the end, we're going to talk about a little bonus method that you might be interested in. Actually, forget that. I'm just going to tell you that bonus method now because I'm not trying to like bait you into watching the video more. If it helps you and you can move on, then so be it, because speed is the key. So let's get into it. And this bonus method that I want to talk to you about requires you to know the hotkeys I'll talk about later. But when you set this up, I mean, it could unlock an unreasonable amount of editing speed. So if you've ever seen anyone gaming, then you'll know that they keep their hands kind of set up on the WASD keys right here. And then they probably have their hand on a mouse over here. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but we're trying to get rid of the mouse. You could do this method with the mouse, and that's totally cool. For the purpose of this video, we're ditching the mouse. So what I would suggest you doing is going into Davinci Resolve and customizing all of your keybinds to where you can keep one hand here on the WASD and another hand over here, and you can literally edit. Like, the method I'm going to show you is great, but your hands kind of have to do some weird like movements, whereas this method you could actually customize everything to be a single key press instead of like a Command C or a Shift Delete or whatever, and it's going to basically remove any extra keys that you have to press and make it just single key hotkeys to where you'll be editing like a gamer. My friend Roman used to do this, and when I edited in Premiere, I also did this. But the reason I don't do this is you are going to have to delete some of the like existing hotkeys that are baked into Davinci Resolve, and so that could be a little confusing if you for some reason need those later. But you're also not going to be able to learn new techniques in Davinci Resolve in the same way, because you're not using the same hotkeys. So you'll basically have to memorize what the tool is called or what the original hotkey was. So when you watch a tutorial, then you can translate that hotkey to your new hotkeys, which is a bit of a bummer. But on the flip side, if you know a ton about Davinci Resolve and you're just trying to speed up your editing, then customizing all your hotkeys in this way with this gamer-like method means that your hands will never have to leave the keyboard, and every tool that you need will be just incredibly easy to get to. Now, something to note before we really get into it, all of these mouseless editing tips are only in the timeline in the edit page. So it's going to be really hard to color grade and do all those things without a mouse, unless of course you have Davinci's like color wheels and all that. But this is going to get you started to cut through talking heads and interviews, social content really easily, and basically just chop up that timeline as quickly as possible. But if the gamer method isn't really for you, then let's get into the method that I use and see how it works. All right, so we're in our Davinci Resolve timeline, and we have a talking head of me recording a YouTube video, coincidentally. And so first I want to focus on the arrow keys. Now, with the arrow keys, you can move right and left, and that's going to be one frame at a time, as you can see in the timeline right there. But also you can move up and down, and that's going to move your playhead to the next cut. So if there's a cut, let's say here, then you can basically move between that cut and the next cut, and it's going to make those quick moves very easily. But when you combine shift and arrow, then you're going to get a second at a time of movement. So that's super helpful. That gives you that kind of like medium range of movement that you may need. Now, if we do command and arrow, then you're actually going to be able to select the different clips, and this will come in handy. And this will come in handy when we get to some later hotkeys. So let's say I want to cut out this gap here. So what I would do is I would command arrow, and I'll select my clip. Then if I go over to this blank space, now I've selected that clip, and I can shift delete, and it will ripple delete that whole scene or that whole clip. So then if I wanted to come up here and delete this next negative space, then I could command B, which cuts on the playhead, and then command arrow to select my clip, and then shift delete to delete that clip. So This is super helpful, and that's how quickly it can happen. And I mean, you're just doing that movement over and over again throughout this whole editing process. Next, we have V. You know, if you're just in the middle of a clip and you hit V, it's gonna take you to the nearest cut in your timeline, which can be super helpful if you just get a little lost in the timeline. Some obvious things, we've got Command plus and minus to zoom in and out. That is just like standard. Now, everyone knows Command Z, but if you want a single hotkey to undo an edit you just made, tilde actually will undo those edits, which is pretty cool. Command Shift Z will redo the edits you just did. Now, there's this one technique that I use absolutely all the time, and you do have to mess with the mouse a little bit to select different clips, but let me explain. Let's say that I want to scale in this clip right here. So I come over to my inspector, I'm gonna scale it in and bring it up like that. So that's great and all, but then what if I want the entire, this additional clip, or maybe even this clip to be scaled in as well? Well, I could look at my settings up here in the inspector and then try and match them down here, and that would take a long time. So instead, I will just Command C this, and then Option V this clip. Now this brings up the Paste Attributes tab, which is unreal because anything that you select on this will paste the attributes from the previous clip that you copy. So in this case, I just want to paste the zoom and the position modifications. So if I do that, boom, it zooms in. But it could even be as intense as, like, you know, turning the clip upside down, and maybe we're going to do a little pitch or a little yaw on this thing. I don't know what that's called. Oh, and maybe we'll flip it like that. Okay, now we're cooking. So now I'm gonna copy that and I want to paste this on our first clip. You could go through and select everything, but you could also just hit video attributes, which is pretty cool, and hit apply, and now we're good to go. And that's just an awesome talking head if I've ever seen one. I think I'm gonna just start like making all my videos look this way. The bigger and probably more important question of mouseless editing is, why is this beneficial, and what are the downsides of doing this as well? And for me, I think not having to move your hands off the keyboard and mess around with the mouse inevitably saves you a ton of time. Recently, I had a handful of social clips to edit, and I got in here, I got in deep work, and literally cranked out like 10 videos in an hour. Yes, they were all under 60 seconds, and it's all fairly simple editing, but that's the speed that this can allow because you're literally just cranking through clips so quickly. On top of that, not having to break out of just that cutting process will allow that deep work and that flow state to continue, and that's something that I think as an editor is incredibly beneficial because you just aren't going to find yourself distracted or, you know, mousing through different desktop tabs or whatever it is. You're going to be locked in. You're not even touching the mouse, so there's nowhere else to go. But there are some downsides to this method. And I think the first thing that you have to keep in mind is that it's not a foolproof, like, never touching the mouse kind of method. Like that paste attributes thing, you're not able to check the boxes of the attributes that you want to paste without a mouse or without a, you know, cursor. So that is a downside of this. There's also the dynamic of moving in between frames. Like anything that is less than a whole 24 frames to move you a full second, but more than, I would say, around 5 frames, you're gonna run into some issues where it just kind of like takes a little bit more time than you would like to get there, and it takes some reps to really figure out what the fastest way is to move that distance. It's just this weird in-between distance. The thing is, this could save you a huge amount of time in your editing. It's currently saving me a huge amount of time in my editing. In fact, the talking head that you've been watching has been edited this way like as well. So I'm not just throwing this out there and not actually using it. This genuinely helps me. So I hope it genuinely helps you. And there are some other time-saving tips that I made a video about. So if you're trying to speed up that editing workflow even more, then feel free to check out this video here. And until next time, let's get out there and make better films.